Standing with our veterans. Today we know and recognize Colonel Don Patton. Beginning in the 1960s, Donald G. Patton served in the U.S. Army for 30 years after graduating from Texas A&M as a distinguished military graduate and assigned to command positions for over 13 years. When commander of the 407th Civil Affairs, his unit developed procedures for stabilization of civilian military conditions on the battlefield that set the precedent for what would later be used in Desert Storm. After graduation from Residence Army War College in June 1985, he returned to organize the World War II History Roundtable with Dr. Harold Deutsch in 1987. For 30 years, Colonel Patton has presented over 300 programs to educate attendees on the events of World War II. That includes the experiences of veterans. Since 2000, he has planned and led tours to the European battlefields and American cemeteries for Memorial Day services. Patton was awarded the Meritorious Service Medal 5 times during his military service and recently received the Minnesota Superior Volunteer Service Award by the Adjutant General of Minnesota. In the fall of 2022, he received the Ultimate Patriot Award at the annual Fox Nation Patriot Award ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Donald G. Patton.
My name is Don Patton. I was commissioned at Texas A&M as a distinguished military graduate, commissioned into air defense, which at the time of my commissioning was dealing with missiles, Nike Hercules missiles. And my initial assignment after basic training and officer basic was to support a French Nike Hercules unit in Germany with nuclear weapons. We installed nuclear warheads on French missiles, but because of the, again, we're talking about in the 1960s here, because of the proprietary rules, we owned the warhead, the French owned the missile. So there was some interesting liaison that went on with that thing. I grew up in Texas. I had a great influence of my parents, and my interest in World War II was really, the seed was planted as a part of my childhood growing up. It was a very patriotic time. It was a very, I think, happy time for me. The toys I got were military toys, and so the seed was planted. When I attended Texas A&M, it was an all-male, all-military school. We had a corps of cadets of almost 4,000. Of course, at that time, all men had to register for the draft. They had to serve 8 years of some obligation. So when I graduated from A&M, I had 8 years, and was assigned to the air defense Nike missiles, as I mentioned earlier.
You're in the Army now, you're not behind the plow. You'll never get rich while digging a ditch. You're in the Army now, you're in the Army now, you're in the Army now. You'll never get rich on the salary which you get in the Army now.
Officers go through what they call officer basic training. My orders were for 2 years, but the system hadn't acclimated with the sudden influx of officers, but the government was, the U.S. government was providing nuclear warheads to all of our NATO partners, the Belgium, the Dutch, the Germans, and the French, the Greeks, the Turks, everybody that had Honest John missiles, that had Nike Hercules missiles, were had units like I was assigned to have nuclear weapons installed on them. So I was assigned to a unit. We were on the highest mountain in Baden-Württemberg, on the edge of the Black Forest. We were halfway between Stuttgart and the Swiss border. The unit was an isolated unit. We had to go to Stuttgart to get our mail, to get our rations. We had our own mess section. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we went to Stuttgart and picked up supplies of various kinds. One of the times that I went up, I went in to pick up the mail at the post office. And I reported in, Lieutenant Patton reporting to pick up the mail. 357th Artillery Detachment. Go see the base commander. And so I went to the base commander, and he said, we have received a complaint from the President of the United States. You're not allowing your people to go to church. And I said, well, you know, we're an isolated assignment. We're adjacent to a town. It was predominantly a Catholic community, and the fellow that had made the complaint. But he had, this PFC had written a note to his mother that we were down in isolated assignment, didn't have a church to go to, and so this mother was so irate that she wrote the President of the United States, who at that time was John F. Kennedy, and it came down through channels, and I had to take the ire of the base post commander at Stuttgart. Of the 30 years of military service, I had 13 years of command time. My last active duty command was to command a psychological operations unit. The mission of this particular psychological operations unit was to interrogate prisoners of war, to get information from them, and to test psychological messages that the Army, the Air Force would use in both its voice, print, and electronic transmissions. We were able to get involved in several operations and tests to make that work. We actually had 5 different sections within the battalion, and each of those was tailored to support a military police unit. And one of the units that we supported, if you recall the news media of the Abu Ghraib prison issue that happened, which was terrible propaganda for us in the military. That happened well after I had left the unit, but one of the captains that I promoted to major later commanded the unit and had very, very successful results in the Desert Storm in the 1990-91 period. But we developed a doctrine of the way to, there were no field manuals, no technical manuals about how to deal with this. And so we actually produced a document, extensive document on the way to interrogate, the way to handle, the way to process, and the testing procedures for enemy prisoners. And I mentioned the captain that later commanded the battalion had a very, very successful experience in dealing with the Iraqis in the Desert Storm operation. And he and I still get together and reminisce about the evolution of what we accomplished and its final results. I feel that my service was an enriching. I feel I had a real privilege to serve in the military. I feel like I made numerous positive contributions, and I really object to military service as being labeled as a sacrifice. I think there are certainly hardships, there are challenges, but the great privilege of serving in our military today is a privilege. I'm not a good Republican. I am not a good Democrat. I am an American. And there's so much we need to be proud of to be Americans. The reason that I side with the Republican Party is they more closely align with the supporters of our Constitution, with our attempts to keep freedom. The American influence of innovation, technology, of entrepreneurship, of capitalism are reasons that we need to fight very hard for Republican principles to keep the basics of what is America alive.